Everybody, I want to thank you so much for taking time to join us today for this event. My personal goal is that every single person on this event today is going to generate somewhere between $5,000 and $20,000 in new profit, new revenue as a result of being on this event. And that's really exciting for me because I don't often get to say that when I'm doing an event like this. A lot of times the value I'm trying to provide is more long term, and I'm telling you, how to sell better or some new product or some new service or some new sales presentation that can really grow your business long term, and there's value there. But today that is not the case. Today what I'm going to share with you is information from the new stimulus, from some of these funding programs where you can literally get somewhere between $5,000 to $20,000 if you're a 1099 or a sole proprietor or even an ISO or larger company, for sure even more. But how you can get $5,000 to $20,000 within the next couple of weeks as a result of this event. And so one of the things that's been really fun for me leading up to this event is I sent some information out through our Facebook group and through our email list, and I sent this information out about the Paycheck Protection Program specifically. And I am now getting probably 2, 3, 4 emails a day of individual agents saying, James, I wasn't sure when you sent the email out about this. I went through the process. I just got 12,000 in my account. I just got 8,000. I just got 20,000. And so it's really exciting. And so we're going to dive right in today, and we're going to be talking specifically about 1099s and how you can maximize the stimulus in the Paycheck Protection Program. I've got 3 great experts that are going to join me today. And so we're going to dive into that in just a second. One last thing I want to say about this, though. This is an opportunity right now where the government has an enormous amount of money out there that they are just pumping out into the market. Okay. And so what you have to understand is this is one of these opportunities where there is funding available right now. And so for you to not take advantage of that funding, regardless, this is not a political event. This is not a political discussion. The money is already there. This stimulus is already approved. The Paycheck Protection Program already exists. It's already funded, and the money is there, and somebody is going to get it. And I am really passionate about making sure that our industry gets their chunk. The first time around, the first round of Paycheck Protection Program, it was a really hot topic, mainly because even the ISOs and larger companies had no idea what they were doing and how to take advantage of it. And then this time around, I feel like the opportunity is just about as big, but the difference is most of the large companies have already taken advantage of it. And Matt's going to talk more about that for us here in just a minute. So without further ado, let's dive in and let's talk about some things here that we have available in some government programs. So the first thing we're going to talk about here is we want to talk about the Paycheck Protection Program, the Paycheck Protection Program. Now, I'm going to, in just a minute, introduce a special guest that's going to talk about this program, but let me give you just a really high-level view. The government decided that if you were self-employed in any way as a 1099 or a sole proprietor, or if you had a company that was employing people, either way, so whether you were self-employed or whether you had employees, they decided that it was time to pump some money into the market as a result of COVID to provide about 2.5 months worth of income to self-employed or employers. They wanted to provide 2.5 months worth of income to help get you through this crazy time with the coronavirus. Okay. Round 1 had virtually no restrictions. There was a few restrictions on it, but very, very few. Round 2 has a few more restrictions. And so we're going to talk about that. And so what happened was round 1 went out, and all the big companies, the big banks, everybody took advantage of it. But a lot of the 1099s did not. And so they came out with a round 2. And so they added more funding to the program. So even if you got your round 1, you can get round 2. And so they added another 2.5 months. And so really this program is providing about 5 months worth of income or revenue if you're a 1099 or a self-employed sole proprietor. It's providing that much revenue. If you're a larger organization, they're looking at 2.5 times your total gross payroll, and providing funding based on that. And so we're going to dive in and talk about the details, but this is a program where it takes somewhere between 5 days up to maybe 15 days to complete the process and get the money funded into your bank account. That's the average right now of what it's looking like. And that's an incredible thing when you can get that much money that quickly from the government, and it's delivered as an SBA loan, but then it is forgivable. And so as long as you use the money correctly in a way that is in line with the program, it is a forgivable loan. And so you don't ever have to pay the money back. You get the money from the SBA, You never have to pay it back. And again, I've already, my company has already done it. We already got a large amount and it's already been forgiven. And so I've seen it play out. I've seen it, happen over and over again. Now, the reason I'm primarily targeting 1099s and sole proprietors, and we call them sales proprietors here because it's the salespeople, but the reason that we're targeting you is because my assumption is that most of the larger companies that were really interested first time around, most of those larger companies have probably already gotten their money. They're aware of everything that they can do. They're already talking to their accountant to find out how they can take advantage of this next, round two and the stimulus, and they're already on that. They're on top of it. I know my company, we were all over it. But what I've been shocked about is the 1099s and the sales proprietors or sole proprietors. And this idea is that what's happened is the larger businesses are taking advantage of it. The banks are loving it that the large companies are taking advantage of it, but I'm amazed the 1099s are not. They're leaving so much money on the table. I did a little informal poll recently in my Facebook group, and it was staggering to me that over 60% of the people in my group, my Facebook group, that are pretty much all 1099 contractors, 60% of them had never received any funding. And then another big chunk, I want to say 24, 25%, maybe 30, had received round one funding, but not round two. And so many of you are leaving money on the table. And my goal is that at the end of this event, you're not going to be doing that. So last time around, one of the things I really regretted is that I put all this information out there. I tried to help people understand that the program was there. And then I got all these emails from people saying, James, I tried to apply for the Paycheck Protection Program, or I tried to apply for the EIDL, and I did not get it because my bank would not help me. I tried to apply for the Paycheck Protection Program, and I was told I didn't qualify. I submitted paperwork to some lending company. I never got anything back. Somebody dropped the ball, and I kept hearing all of these issues. So this time around, I decided, all this money is out there. So many 1099s were not able to take advantage of it. And so I decided just to find a company that I could trust, that I could work with, and that would actually help our industry and the 1099s in it to be able to take advantage of this program and really get the funding that you deserve and that's sitting there waiting for you. And so the company I found was Blue Acorn. And so, this is Matt Mandell. He's going to be joining us here in just a second. And so when I reached out to them, I was so excited because they've built this platform. I don't want to steal too much of his thunder, but they really have built a platform designed specifically for, these 1099 contractors that really allows them to be able to take advantage of this without too much of the paperwork and all that. They've really streamlined the process. So let me go ahead and get Matt up here. So Matt, I'm going to unmute your line, and then if you want to share your webcam again as well.
Sure.
Awesome. There we go.
Hey,
How you doing today, Matt?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. So, Matt, why don't you take a second, introduce yourself to our audience, tell us a little bit of your background, and then talk about how you got into the Blue Acorn.
Sure. So my name is Matt Mandell. I'm a serial entrepreneur, and I've been doing a whole bunch of different things for many years. In about 2015, I started in the payments industry, and through that, I've had a bunch of banking relationships. I was connected to Blue Acorn. And what Blue Acorn is effectively taking a lot of the things that we know in the payments industry and all the fintech companies and applying it to improve 1099 contractors who are largely overlooked. So I said, okay, like how are we going to do this? And we've essentially built technology, built the funnel to make it incredibly simple using just best-in-class technology, and also just added the communications in that we feel like we're lacking in the industry. And the first round of PPP last year, I ended up, and I applied through one of the top 5 banks, which is where I bank, and their response was sorry after the money ran out, which
Right.
was a less than amazing experience, obviously. And now that, as someone who lives in the FSP space, I understand intimately what's possible and what's there. And I was like, hey, how do we fix this? And
Right.
joined a team, help that.
Love it. So let me ask you this question to start off with, Matt. So, let's assume some of our audience has no idea really what we're talking about for a second. So,
Mhm.
Paycheck Protection Program, what is it? How would you describe it to somebody that really didn't know anything about it?
Sure. So I would describe it as looking at what the government's trying to do. What we see is that money that moves is an economy. Money that sits in bank accounts creates poverty and creates a massive depression. So the goal is to make money move. And the intent initially was to say, okay, how do we make money move? Let's give it to business owners who are going to replace payroll. And as opposed to laying people off, contracting, and being scared, let's give business owners the confidence that they need in order to proceed and keep going, knowing that, hey, COVID's not great, to say the absolute minimum, but it's something that we're going to live through and get through it together.
Yeah, yeah, I like it. I like it. So the Paycheck Protection Program, how does it do that exactly?
So what it does is it takes on a large level, you're taking the total amount of payroll. It's been shifted actually like over a couple of iterations, because what the SBA puts out is they put out interim final rules, which always makes my head explode, because if something is interim, it is by definition not final, in my opinion. And what it's saying is we're going to cover your payroll costs for 2.5 months. That is shifted in early March. I believe it was March 3rd. It shifted to being what's called line 7, which is you're actually based on your gross income, right, and essentially giving you 2.5 months of coverage for that. Now, when you look at a lot of the things that were created were based on larger employers and larger companies in general. When you apply that to the small proprietor 1099 type of approach, some of the approaches get a little bit weird, but fundamentally the goal is, how do we take your income and replace your income?
Right. Right. So, okay. So, one of the big questions I'm sure on everybody's mind is, why hasn't everybody done this? So it's always the question on my mind. So I alluded earlier to a survey I did. So, well, I've got the numbers here. 63% of 1099s in my Facebook group of about 1,000 never received any round 1 or round 2 money from PPP. 23% got round 1, but not round 2. And only 14% have received both round 1 and round 2. So what's the deal? Why is it so hard? Why were 1099s not able to get in on the first round? Why are they still not taking advantage of it?
Well, so if it goes back to incentives. If your option is to go out and go on a sales call, and your option is go to one company where you have a potential of a 6-figure payday, or a company that you have a potential of getting a 2-figure payday, where are you going to focus your attention? The banks, based on the incentives and the way it was set up, it was based on percentage of dollars put on the street. So the more dollars they put out, they could process a loan for someone like you or me that would be between $5,000 and $20,000, or they could spend the time working on a large chain and a much larger client where they know the percentages for themselves, as well as cementing the relationship that they have for a larger client, would be greater. So quite honestly, we like, our opinion is the little guy was like, and girl, like, we're not taking advantage of, or not serviced, quite frankly.
Right. So basically what you're saying is there was a certain amount of funding available with round 1, and the rules were that it wasn't any special incentive for the banks to go after the 1099s or sole props. So why would they go after the smaller loans when they could go after the really big ones, since they're going to get a percentage of what they loan out?
It was actually a disincentive because it's based purely on percentage only. What shifted with the second round is the way that the banks are paid. There's a slightly higher amount to incent the smaller borrower. The challenge is that it is still not enough for a large bank, because the large bank underwrites and looks at a file the exact same way. And we would look at you and me coming in personally as a 1099 the exact same way as they would look at a large business or a chain restaurant that's coming in.
Right.
Which is just challenging to underwrite at a smaller size. As you know, if you bring a small account to someone, it's the same amount of work to invoice, same amount of work to do everything, but not the same reward.
So then Blue Acorn basically saw this as an opportunity, and especially because I believe, correct me if I'm wrong here, round 2, I believe there's a certain amount of funding that has to go to smaller borrowers, right?
Correct. There was a period where there were a few weeks where it was closed off only to smaller businesses in general.
Okay.
Yesterday, we actually see an extension that was passed through Senate as well as the House last week, and that essentially gives a continuation. What's being estimated by the SBA right now is that it should last through the middle to end of April, but realistically, the faster you get in your application, that will actually get your funds secured. If you don't have your funds secured, you're like, and the funds run out, there is no other option unless it's extended, which again is dynamic in governments.
Right, exactly. So at some point the funds are going to run out and it's a first come first serve program, right?
Correct. And the current estimate is the end of April, as is reported by the SBA directly.
Right, got it. Okay, so so let's talk for just a second about round one. All right, so let's dive in a little more
Sure.
detail here. So let's say a 1099 contractor has never received Paycheck Protection Program money, never got a penny of it. What can they do? Can they still go after the round one and use those rules, or do they is it all
Yep.
round two now? How does that work exactly?
So if it's your first PPP that you're receiving, you're able to use either your 2019 or 2020 Schedule C. So if you're a W-2, if you work for a company and you are a W-2 employee, you would not qualify.
Right.
If you work as an independent sales contractor, if you drive for Uber, if you are a truck driver, if you are a gig worker of many different flavors, if you're a hairdresser, there are a ton of different industries. There's over 70 million in the US who would qualify. So statistically, you probably do qualify out there. What we're looking for is how much do you report on your 1040, which is on your tax return. About 6 or 8 pages back, you're going to see what's called a Schedule C. And you'll know it's the Schedule C because on the upper left, it will literally say Schedule C. And then if you look at line 7, that should be a positive amount, assuming it was being done correctly, because it's a total amount you made. And as a very rough estimate, for every $10,000 of income that you made in 2019 or 2020, you can pick whichever is higher, you will receive about $2,000 in PPP funding. So essentially, and the back of napkin approach is if you make $50,000, you'll see about $10,000 in what you qualify for. Now, every situation is different, and we actually analyze it live on the site, but it's a good back of napkin math. That is what I'd look to. And you can pick whichever year, if it's your first round, whichever year is higher. And what's nice is, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people out there haven't filed their taxes. I know that I haven't filed my taxes for last year. We actually have a builder on the site which you can fill out your draft. So you can use the best information possible. And then once you have your full information and once you've done your full accounting or gone to your tax preparer, you can file the actual amount, whether it's higher or lower, that's fine. Our goal is to use the best estimate and best information possible when filling this out to qualify for the PPP.
Yeah, I will say too, Matt, one of the things that really struck me about the whole process is the simplicity of it. Not only what Blue Acorn has done, which has made it exponentially simpler, but even without that, this is not a normal SBA program where there's just mounds of paperwork and time. And it's very simple. It's like, you tell us what you did and don't lie to us and we'll give you the money. It's kind of how it feels.
It's absolutely, I mean, the SBA was tapped by Treasury to run the program, because they're the group in the government that they felt was most qualified to hand out the money and actually administer the program. In general, their focus is, as you said, underwriting the larger files and handling it. What's interesting is they've embraced automation at such a rate that it's pretty amazing to see. Like they've become much closer to a fintech than anyone would have ever expected.
Yeah, they almost had to be to get the volume through that they
on scale.
Yeah. So, all right. So let's transition a little bit and talk about round two. So with round one, as you mentioned, for every 10,000 in income, very rough estimate, about 2,000 you get in PPP money. And I mean, I know some restrictions apply, but not very many with the round one. When we go into round two, you've already gotten round one money. You want to get it again round two. Can you talk about the subtle changes there going from round one to round two and how that someone could still qualify for that?
Sure. So qualification wise, you have to report a drop in income in any one quarter or the entire year. So let's say, for example, if
2020.
Correct. So for example, if you drove for Uber and you made $50,000 in year one, you'd have to have the 25% year drop, which again, I'm making it hard on myself as opposed to going to around $100,000 number. But assuming you have the 25% drop of about 35,000 or so, generally, you would then you then qualify, and that could be any quarter, meaning any January, February, March, and then it goes all the way through the quarters, or an aggregate over the course of a year. So if you drove for Uber and or essentially sold something, and you said, hey, my boss said I have to stay inside, or I stayed home to take care of kids for 3 months, you'd qualify. So I mean, if daycare closed and daycare opened up in June, July, you would qualify, and that would, assuming that you had the drop, you'd qualify.
Right. So I want to make sure our audience is really understanding. So with round one, you
Mhm.
qualify. If you're 1099, if you're self-employed, I mean, there are very few restrictions. You do not have to have made
Yep,
less money. You could have made more money and you would still qualify for
correct.
round one. So if you've never gotten a PPP loan, you would qualify for it. If round one, if you're 1099, self-employed, have employees, whatever that might be.
Mhm.
Then we go to round two, you have to have shown a 25% loss, whether it's the first quarter of 2019, your income was down 25% in the first quarter of 2020, or the second quarter, or for the entire year. Is that what you're saying?
Correct, and it's quarter to quarter. So it's 2019 Q1 to 2019 Q2 or Q1.
Right.
You can't mix quarters,
Yes.
and also it caps at $100,000. So the maximum amount of
Right.
PPP that you qualify for is $20,832, and so above 100,000, if you drop from $200,000 to $150,000, that would qualify for the drop, but you still are capping out at a $20,000 amount as a
Amount.
1099.
Okay, so we keep talking about this amount and getting funded and a loan and things like this.
Mhm.
I'm sure our audience is starting to say, why would I want to borrow money from the SBA? And we keep
Uh,
talking about this word forgivable, and this is a
mhm.
forgivable loan. What does that mean? And can you explain a little bit of that to our audience and why this is a very different kind of loan than they would normally get?
Yep. So the focus is the government is trying to get money to be spent and have money to be spent in the economy, and they're essentially handing money to be spent to individual people. In order to have it be forgiven, it's got to be spent within 24 weeks, which is 6 months. And what that means is, for an independent contractor, you can pay yourself by literally writing yourself a check and moving it from one account to another, or essentially like going and spending it. And within that period of time, 60% should be spent on payroll. And the reason why they're putting that in is larger businesses were focused on, hey, can I pay other contractors? Can I pay for a brand new air conditioner?
Right.
The intent was to replace payroll. 60% of the money has to be spent on payroll. 40% can be spent on other areas, like utilities, taxes, benefits. What's interesting is you can literally pay tax debt with your PPP, which feels like sort of like make your head explode if you follow the money trail.
Right, absolutely. So, yeah, so I love it. So this sounds great. So the idea is you get this money from the SBA. It's structured as a loan, but then as
Mhm.
long as you do the right thing with it, it's forgivable.
Yep.
I know 1099 contractors, and you touched on this, but let's be really specific. If I'm a 1099 contractor, sole proprietor, um, how exactly am I going to do this? It sounds like I can just pay myself the money and
Yep.
then it's forgivable. Do you have a certain recommendation of how I do that to make sure it is forgivable?
So the largest there's a lot of talk in the news in general about like what's going to be forgiven, what's not going to be forgiven, and
Right,
the amounts that we're working with under $20,000 is the largest, like the largest like area to be largely blanket forgiven as a general rule, because
right,
most people like are not, I'm amazed at how honest people are, and just people are generally like good in
right.
telling the truth. um,
Yes.
we've seen some people who will open up an additional bank account and just pay it from one account to another because they're going to
Right.
look for a check stub for forgiveness. We have some
Yep.
people who will just live their lives and be paying things, and because they're paying things just like normal, that also would qualify because they're spending the money in general.
Right.
Um,
Right.
those are the two predominant ways that we're seeing.
Sure.
But there's just like we're making applications simple. As soon as this closes and as soon as some of the time passes, we're shifting everything to automating the forgiveness piece, because
Right.
that success to us is 100% forgiveness.
Yep. Love it. Awesome. Okay. So last thing here, I want to talk about, your technology that you built. And so again,
Mhm,
I was really looking for a company that I could work with.
mhm,
And when I found Blue Acorn and the technology that you guys had, I really wanted to provide something to our industry, to
mhm.
salespeople, that they could go there and find out about this. So can you describe a little bit about what this experience is going to look like? I know we've created this ccsalesppp.com that will help
Yep.
these individuals be able to go there. So tell us about the technology and what they're going to experience when they go there, what that process is like.
Sure. So what we have is about a 10-question quiz. where it's really simple. It's very much a yes, no, a couple of sliders to adjust how much money you made and type of entity you have or don't have. And then from there, that's going to give you an estimate. And then it should take about a minute, 2 minutes in general. Then once you click through, you can complete an application. What you're going to need at a minimum is a picture of the front of your license. But what we have is you can literally request a text link, so it goes right to your phone. And then from your phone, you're able to take a picture and continue the application from there. So assuming you have your license, we'll connect to your bank account on an automated basis. And by doing that, we're going to verify that you are in business before February 15th of 2020. And then we're going to verify the account where the money's going to go, because if we don't have a bank account, we can't send money by carrier pigeon because the government just won't let us do that. But what we're trying to do is make it as simple as possible. If for some reason you have a brand new bank account, we would very easily just say, okay, no problem. Show us a bank statement from February 2020, and that says to the government, hey, you were in business then, because essentially there doesn't be any requirement of money in it. It has to be an open bank account, and then from there you literally can submit your application. Depending on the load at any one time, underwriting and the validation process takes between about 8 hours and about 2 days, depending on sort of the flows in the day as things go up and down. Then we hear back from the SBA through their automated system within a couple of days. And from there, then you sign a DocuSign document, and money's deposited into your account. It goes through the FedWire system, just like everyone probably knows, and goes Fed to our bank to your bank. And the entire process, if the Fed isn't delayed, if the SBA isn't delayed, can be as quick as 4 or 5 days, can be as slow as about 10 to 12 days. It's kind of like the outside edge that we're seeing right now. Again, a lot of it goes up and down.
Yeah. So what everybody needs to do here is you need to go to ccsalesppp.com. That's going to take you to a page that was created by Blue Acorn. We work with them. They have an amazing survey there. You go through and complete this survey. That's going to tell you if you qualify and roughly how much you would qualify for. And then right after that's done, it's a pretty seamless process. Takes you right into the application. You guys have done a fantastic job. I feel like of streamlining this thing. Allowing them to log into the bank and just all the things that you need, that you made it so easy. I wish it was around last time when I replied, but just, getting it all through was a little bit more challenging last time for me with my bank, but it's so nice and streamlined. Get this all done. And then once it gets in, it sounds like somewhere around 2 business days on the outside, you're going to get an approval back from the SBA along with some DocuSign documents you have to sign.
Yep.
When that goes back in, then you're saying somewhere 5 to 10 days, 12 days out, then that money gets deposited to your bank account.
Correct.
Awesome. So one last thing I'll touch on real quick, Matt, before I let you go.
Sure.
If some of you that are listening in this audience, we do have an affiliate program. Blue Acorn's put together a great affiliate program. Let me say this is for serious partners only. And so if you want to reach out to me directly, I've worked with them on this to be able to set this up for some agents. So if this is something where you want to go out to all of your small business clients, or you've got a big network of 1099 contractors and you want to send us 10, 15, 20 people that need to get this loan, if you want to do that, just shoot me an email personally, james@ccsalespro.com. I can work together with Matt on that, and we can get you your own custom affiliate link so that you can run through that process. So my big passion with this is, the affiliate money is not huge. If you're looking to make a fortune at it, it's not huge unless you're going to be doing hundreds and hundreds of these. But the idea is, I wanted to make sure that this industry, that everybody was able to get this money that was qualified for it. So if you have an interest in that, reach out to me. Otherwise, go to ccsalesppp.com and get started. Matt, any final words for our audience before we let you go?
I would say one is, you are the only group who we're allowing to have independent sales agents go and take this on. So, and part of that is as an appreciation, because you've taught me so much about the industry that I wanted to give back to the community, full stop. And the other thing is, it's a reason to reach out to people who you haven't spoke to before or in a while, and at the end of a contract, it's, hey, I've got free money for you. Would you like it? It's a very compelling discussion to have with who you're working with out there.
Yes, exactly. Well, Matt, thank you so much. Are you going to be able to stick around until the end, do a little Q&A for some people that had some questions, or are you jumping off?
I should be able to, yes.
Okay, good. And if you're not, it's fine. We'll run through them, and I'll email you any ones that we don't have. But if you have a question, feel free to type it out in the question box. We got about 3 minutes right now. We're kind of running a little bit ahead of schedule, so I'll run through a couple of these, Matt, real quick while you're on here.
Sure.
And that way, actually, you could jump off if you need to, and then we can run through the rest later. Um,
Sure.
my CPA states if I did not already have employees, then the PPP program would not be good for me.
That was the case before. That is not the case now.
Okay, got it. Um, Oh, let's see here. One thing we do have a couple of people on here that mentioned, hey, I applied through Blue Acorn, waiting to get
Mhm.
my response, that kind of thing. And I think it's
Yep.
important for everybody to realize that this is a pretty automated process that you guys have built, right?
It's so we have a fairly automated process. There are hundreds of people who are working in the back end to process as fast as possible, and we are literally working. I've been working 7 days a week, with the shortest day being about 18 hours a day thus far. So we're moving as fast as humanly possible. If you like, feel free to to reach out to James, and he can forward the email direct to me, and I'm happy to take a look at anything specific, and handle anything specific in general.
Awesome. So a couple of other questions here. A lot of questions around, I was 1099 at one point. I was independent, but somebody was taking taxes out for me. I mean, I think the big takeaway here, right, is if you got paid with a 1099 instead of a W-2, you would
Correct.
qualify. Is that right?
And yes, and what you can do is, we've seen a lot of people who maybe they have money from multiple income streams. So they have two
Yes.
1099s and they're a single member LLC. Roll it up into one amount and you're totally fine. As long as it appears in your Schedule C, or you plan to put it in your Schedule C for 2020, just
Right.
add it together. So if you drove for Uber, if you worked for Instacart, if you also like were a hairdresser, take those three amounts, roll it up under one, and that's your total amount. If you
Right.
worked for a company and then worked on the side, take your side money, not the company money that you're getting paid W-2. Anything that you're getting paid that shows up on your Schedule C, though, would qualify.
Got it. One last question we'll take now. There's a bunch more. We'll get to them later. If you can stick around, great. If not, no problem. But can you get this loan if your credit is not good? Can you talk about the qualifications? We didn't really
Oh,
touch on that
that's
of credit, et cetera. Go
yeah.
ahead.
I'm sorry that so that's what's amazing is there is no credit check. The
Right.
only reason why we ask for a social is because it is required by the SBA, because the SBA wants to make sure they're not giving out the same money to James Shepard, and understand you James Shepard versus another James Shepard in another place. So there's
Right.
no credit check at all. If you were in active bankruptcy, you cannot apply. If you are on unemployment, you can't apply. Otherwise, or you'd have to forego the unemployment benefits for the period which you were receiving PPP. Outside of those two big things, by and large, you qualify as a general
Right.
rule. Realistically, if you aren't sure, fill out an application. The SBA system is the arbiter of truth. That's the only thing that we care about, because we're administering the program for the SBA.
Right.
They have a system called ETRAN. Like, I would recommend, it is better to apply and then find out that like, hey, like there's an issue. There are very few issues as a general rule. Most of them
Yes.
are, I applied other places and was approved through another provider, and they just
Right.
haven't communicated. That is the biggest issue as an error code that we're seeing, in general.
Yep. Yeah. So again, yeah, I mean, no credit check. I mean, really not even, it took away a lot of the criminal background check stuff as well.
Correct.
Right. And they had some of that
Yep.
initially, but they took some of that away. So I would say if you have any doubts at all, take 20 minutes and fill out the application. Like seriously, like what are you waiting on? If it gets denied, it gets denied. It's like you're going to be in trouble for applying. If they deny it, they
You're
deny it.
not.
Right.
You are not at all. And the feedback that we have heard from the SBA is, you are not the IRS. We are not the IRS. Like
Right.
what someone says, and like the attestations they make are literally like, it's put it through the system, and
Right.
like let the system decide. And then if there's an issue, we can step in. But as a general rule, it is largely automated, and is made to be simple, so that we can handle the volume that we're seeing on a regular basis.
Awesome. So, Matt, thank you so much for your time today and your expertise. I know a lot of people are going to love you very much over the next few weeks if they get paid. So thank you
Yeah.
so much for taking time to put this amazing thing together, and also taking time to share it with our audience today. I really appreciate it.
Sounds great. My pleasure. Thanks, James.
Okay, so again, I'll give you the link one more time. In fact, I'll even put it down here in the chat box as well, so that way some of you can get it if maybe you didn't already. It is ccsalesppp.com. And so I will just send this to everybody right now. So again, ccsalesppp.com. Definitely check that out. and go there, apply for it. So now what we're going to do is I got a couple other topics here. I definitely think we have some good stuff we're going to cover over the next few minutes. And then of course we're going to get to our Q&A session. So again, keep typing those questions out. I know I was only able to get to a few of them. I promise you that we'll circle back around. If Matt's able to hang around, he'll jump on. And if not, totally fine. I'm sure myself and James Huber and Chris can handle those as well. So any questions you have, just type them out. I promise you that I'll do my best to get to them. And if I don't, somebody on my team will personally email you after the event. So you can keep typing those out. So let's talk now about the LLC, the S Corp, the C Corp. I've gotten a lot of questions. Some of you, you're like, well, I don't get a 1099. I have a limited liability company, or we're a small ISO and we have a small team of salespeople. What can we do? How can we make money from all of this? And so I've asked to join us some returning guests, James Huber and Chris Dryden of the Global Legal Law Firm. And, I've really been so impressed with them. I've had the opportunity to work with them several times. I send clients over that way, constantly. Anytime somebody is saying, hey, we need an industry attorney, I say, well, I know who you need to reach out to. And so I'm really excited to have them join and really talk about how can some of the larger, organizations, or again, even those of you that are smaller, but you've got that limited liability company or that S Corp. So I'm going to get their lines unmuted here. And then James and Chris, if you guys want to share your webcam, I had that turned off earlier, but you could reshare that again. How's it going, James?
Good. Hey.
There we go. And we got Chris. How you doing there, Chris?
What's going on, James?
Awesome. So these are two payments expert attorneys, I guess is the best way to describe it. But before we dive into all this, I really wanted to get a little bit of information from you guys for our audience that maybe didn't join us on the last event that we did together. Tell us about what you do. What is Global Legal Law Firm all about? What's your specialty? And then we'll dive into some of these questions. So James, you want to jump in and answer that, or who's going to answer for us here?
I was nodding at Chris. He's my hype guy.
Go ahead, Chris.
I'll be Flavor Flav. So Global Legal was basically a law firm. I formed it about 2008. James has been on staff a year later and then became my partner a couple years after that. And this entire law firm was built off one ISO relationship. So, and fortunately / unfortunately, kind of had to learn the ropes because it was the old smash and grab ISO with a lot of leasing. And so, sure, you kind of learn payments. And what we realized was that there was nobody in this industry whatsoever. And as payments started to evolve and become far more dynamic and far more like technological, our firm just started doing more and more things related to payments that were just outside of sales, because when you're a salesperson in payments these days, you're also like a technology salesperson to a certain degree, because things have just, organically evolved so much. But more than anything, we just focus on companies that are engaged in the payment space, whether you're out brokering or you're a TPP or an ISV or whatever it is. If you're engaged in this space, there's, the possibility that we can help you, whether it's with contracts, litigation, M&A work, doesn't really matter.
Awesome. So Chris, let me ask you this as we kind of dive into this topic. We talked so much about Paycheck Protection Program already, but let's talk about that a little bit with some of the larger companies and ISOs, the entities that are formed. Who should still be applying for the PPP? What are some of the differences with these larger organizations versus the individual contractors?
Well, last year, I mean, if it's your first time, anyone, right? I mean, I look at it as, if you have employees and you have a need, just apply, because as you said, this is just money that's trying to find its way into the marketplace. So whoever can get to it, get to it. But ultimately, if you're in your first round, it's back to, what we had initially, which is they're looking at, what your need is for employees primarily. So it's 2.5 times your average monthly. On the second round, it's a little bit different, because James and I, we applied last year and actually received PPP money. And then this year we looked at the qualifications. So there's some variations that are important. Some are beneficial, some are kind of detrimental for us. I don't think we qualify on the second time around, because now you have to show a 25% decrease, as Matt was talking about, from first quarter of 2020 to first quarter of 2019, or second quarter to second quarter, you've got to show that your gross receipts, so all revenue coming into your business, was actually 25% less. It is going to restrict the marketplace for some of these larger companies that got the money before, so that more of the 1099 and salespeople can come in and get it. But ultimately, I still think, based on the time period involved with when the pandemic went into place and kind of the initial downturn, I do believe that most people will still find a quarter, whether it be the first quarter or the second quarter of 2020, when they look back to 2019, they're going to see a decrease. And in listening to Matt talk, I was actually even trying to get a little bit more creative and say, well, maybe I can look at the second quarter of 2020 and compare it to the second quarter of 2021, maybe, or the first and first. I don't think that they're going to let us do that, but potentially. And the reason that I say that is because when they're looking at the actual amounts, I've seen conflicting calculations. Some say it's over the calendar year of 2019. Some say it's over the calendar year of 2020. And then I saw some language that said it's the year look back from the date of the application, which would take you into 2021. Right. So potentially I'm going to look into that a little bit further to see if there's going to be some flexibility.
Yeah.
Well, they just moved the application termination date up to sometime in late May. I don't know the exact date, but they pushed it back even further. They want to give all this money away.
They really do. They really do. And it's funny you say this. Like, it was literally one of the only times in my entire career that I had a moment of regret that my company consistently grows every year. I'm looking at the quarters, I'm lining them up with my CPA, and I'm like, come on, we had to lose money one of these quarters over the other one. And it's like, snake. So yeah. So basically, bottom line is, if you grew every quarter from 2019 to 2020, you're not going to qualify. But if at least one of those quarters or the year as a whole, you had that 25% drop, then definitely check it out. Okay, so James, let's go ahead.
I was just going to say real quick, and I can get into it later on if you talk to James, but there are some slight changes to certain types of businesses, which I think can also be used as a sales tool for some of the people on the webinar. There are particular businesses that are going to be able to get a little more flexibility on how they spend the money and how much money they get. I can go into that later if you want, but it could be used as a good in when you're out selling to certain types of businesses, assuming that you sell to those types of businesses.
Well, I think the primary one is restaurants, right? As far as what our audience would encounter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just some changes there. Yeah, we'll maybe get into that in a little bit. So James, let's zoom out for a minute and talk about this stimulus. So this latest piece of legislation, $1.9 trillion of money that's supposed to be stimulating the economy. How do you see this impacting the payment space?
Well, I mean, the immediate effect is people spend this money. The studies defer. I heard a great story that was a guy gets his stimulus check. He goes out and basically he spends it all. He buys a painting at a thrift store. He likes the painting so much. Then he goes and gets the painting tattooed on himself, and takes his wife out to barbecue. So that's the stimulus payment, if that's what you're asking. I think you are. People spend this, I think, but overall, it doesn't. I think it's kind of a band-aid propping the economy up a little bit. And the only people it really helps are lower middle class and poor who can't pay rent or buy food or having trouble with that stuff.
Right.
But they're generally having trouble anyways. For the people in the middle and upper middle class, it's also nice because a lot of people are putting this in the stock market. So they're saying that this is also helping prop up the stock market. I don't think that's necessarily true either, because I think the 1% is keeping the stock market propped up. But the stock market's not the economy, which everyone keeps saying, but no one seems to believe. Anyways, I think it does very little overall. That for 1099s and everything, it's a cushion for to get you through a little bit. I mean, the negative effect, of course, is inflation. And the real negative, but we don't know if that's going to happen. We all think it is, but the real negative effect is tricking. Probably, the biggest threat I see is tricking people into thinking that everything's okay and it's business as usual.
Right.
It's not. We're in a new landscape, and if you haven't realized it, it's time to start thinking about it. You're on here, you've grown your business in doing this.
Right.
That's what everybody needs to be thinking about in this economy in post-COVID. This has substantially changed the landscape, and I think you're going to ask me about that a little bit more. So, short answer is not much.
Right. Yeah. And it's funny. I always tell people, I say, get as much money as you can possibly get from the government, from these programs, but don't depend on them. If you're depending on them, you're in trouble, because you got to have your own business. You got to have your own profitability. And I would much rather have to turn down round 2 because my business was growing than be needing it because I was dying. So, I think we absolutely want to go down that path. So Chris, let me go back to you and just let's touch on quickly. Are there other programs, if we take the Paycheck Protection Program out of it, the stimulus checks out, which, we've touched on, I know the first round we had this, the EIDL and some other things. Are there other opportunities for ISOs right now that are looking to get low cost capital, funding options? What are you seeing out there that ISOs are leveraging to get capital right now?
So the interesting part is that after the PPP, there was actually an SBA loan that went out and was offered last time around.
Yes.
And the terms of it were really good. It was 30 years, 3 3/4 fixed, up to 150K, somewhere around there. Or maybe there were different tiers to it. But
there was different tiers, yes.
Yeah, but there was the actual numbers on that, to me, that looked like free money if you pay it out over time. This time, I don't see that. There is, and you said low cost. I don't necessarily think so. The SBA is offering an express bridge loan, but that seems to me to be more like I'm in dire need of getting these funds, and I need something to prop me up, because the percentage, it was only up to 25K, and I wanted to say it was like 6.5 points over prime, which puts you at like roughly 10%, 9%. So I didn't think the terms are really good. But the EIDL is still there. The EIDL before the disaster loan was at I want to say something like 2 million cap. They've lowered it to 150, so I think they can distribute more of it.
Right.
And then that's also different, though. You can get an advance on those funds immediately, and then you can get, I believe, up to 10K per business, but then an additional 1K per employee, and all of that money is fully forgivable. Right. So if you're able to get in on the front end of, hey, I need this money immediately under the EIDL, then in that application process, you shouldn't have a problem, one, getting it funded rather quickly, and then having it totally be forgiven. But outside of that, the unemployment's still there. So it's not going to relate to the companies necessarily. The only way that I see that the unemployment, the PUA part of it that applies to corporate entities, is that if you're hiring back employees, it's good information to know that even if they're on a part-time, they can continue to get unemployment benefits as being underemployed, and then you can still hire them back. So there's a give and take there where there's a percentage back and forth. I also wanted to add this, just so it's out there. We were ready to file our taxes this year, and though there was good direction from the IRS on how the PPP money was going to be treated, we unfortunately have to deal with the Franchise Tax Board here in California, and they haven't really issued any guidance on how they want to treat the money. So we wouldn't actually know how much tax we're supposed to pay. So you're also going to need to defer to your state taxing agency to see how they're going to treat the money that you do receive. Of course, that'll be next year if you didn't get it the first round and you're only getting it now. But you still need to look into it, because we were about ready to hit go, and then our accountants told us no.
Yeah, we filed an extension already just because Same situation, you know, and it seems like there's new guidance coming out every day about unemployment compensation. So it's like, you know, if you got any government funding that was unusual last year, you might want to hold off a little bit on filing those returns. And as you said, definitely check with your state. I also want to go back to the EIDL for 1 minute. So just to clarify on that, we talk about two different things there. We have the EIDL advance, which
Correct.
is totally forgivable. In fact, I don't think there's even any requirement whatsoever. It's just forgivable instantly. When you get it, it's like a grant. You don't have to do anything to prove anything. You don't have to pay it back. That's the EIDL advance that goes up to 10,000. It's 1,000 per employee. So if you're an individual sole proprietor, self-employed contractor, you would get $1,000. If you had, you know, yourself and 2 employees, you get 3,000. Then there's the EIDL loan. This is not forgivable, but the terms are very favorable. There's still money there. And honestly, I gotta tell you, Chris, I agree with you about the free money thing, which is why we did it. We got the 150 cap. And why wouldn't you do this as a company? If you have any anticipation to grow your business, you're not going to find more favorable terms than 30 years at 3.25. I mean, that's pretty good.
Yeah. If you amortize in a cost of living adjustment, I'm figuring you get to like year 10, you're almost in free money range. I mean, you're really not paying the interest any longer.
Yep, exactly. So there's definitely opportunities out there if your company is looking to grow, if you have an ISO and you haven't taken advantage of the EIDL, you know, definitely check that out. So James, I keep going back to you for kind of the big picture questions here. That's just what we're doing today. So you're the big picture guy today. So let's talk for a minute about what payments, you know, agents, ISOs, as you mentioned, this new world that we're living in, this new landscape. You're talking to them every day. You're giving them advice. What should they be doing? How should they be transitioning to really maximize profits while still protecting themselves in this new environment that we're in?
Yeah, I mean, we've been thinking about this a lot since this happened a year ago. You know, we circled up with our, you know, client base and started talking to them about what they're going to do and how they're dealing with it. And
right.
You know, the biggest opportunity that I see that I'd like to see happen is there's a chance to bring a whole bunch of new people into the payment space. A lot of our clients were born out of the 2008 financial crisis and afterwards.
Right.
And I'd love to see that be the result here. People that were getting by in their job and, you know, the job didn't work out, or, you know, they had an awakening or whatever due to, you know,
Right.
changes in circumstances. Is the payments industry is treated, you know, almost all of us really well. So, you know, the opportunity to recruit people that are looking, or, you know, that's the biggest opportunity I'd like to see.
Yeah,
But
I agree.
COVID created a lot of other opportunities. You know, the biggest thing that we see is payments is still not saturated. There are at least 100,000 merchants out there that are looking for payment processing and they can't get it, or they're unhappy with their processor. Right. So during COVID, we saw a tremendous, like, floodgates of people being put on the match list that needed to get off the match list. And you can imagine, you know, a guy who's selling pool supplies online, all of a sudden he is going bonkers because nobody wants to go to a pool store. He can't keep up with the orders, the borders are closed, this, that, or the other thing. He starts getting charged back, he's put on match. All sorts of things, even random things, because the anomalies. Online businesses started popping, you know, oh, I thought I was only doing, you know, 50K a month, now I'm doing 250K a month, and I got put on match because my business is doing great.
Right.
Same thing with reserve accounts, where people, you know, the processors don't want to lose any money. So they're just keeping reserve accounts. We're going to keep your reserve accounts. Yeah. All of these merchants are violently unhappy with their processing relationship, unhappy with their, you know, everybody involved. What I, you know, potentially see here is a return to merchants wanting white glove down home service, where I can actually deal with somebody and they can pick up the phone and they know the attorney to call to get me off the match list, to get my reserve account back, to, you know, actually take care of me and, you know, handle my issues. And on the same time, there's a whole bunch of people in the marketplace that they did start a new business. They don't know what they're doing, and they're online and they're categorized high risk, but they're just selling regular stuff online. So I think there is a huge surge of people that are not new to the game that would like to see something different. And they're just sitting there going, I don't know what to do. And they're trying to get by because the reserve is so high. Now they're on the match list. They're paying these huge rates. They don't, they look it up online. They can't even figure out how to get off of it. Back in the day, you couldn't get off the match list. I think, we still run into agents that tell their customers, like, don't even bother if you're on the match list. Now you can get off the match list now. We're having huge success because we're going, this is BS. You can't just put people on the match list. We're hitting it at a due process, but I can go into that later. But there is a huge opportunity of merchants that are probably just want somebody who can work with them honestly.
I like that. I think that's so important because what you're bringing up is a lot of the audience that's listening today, they're focused primarily on card present merchants. They're focused on, we're going to go into these restaurants and retail. And the truth is, many of those businesses have either gone out of business or are about to go out of business, and they're really struggling. And, what I hear you saying is there's a big opportunity not only in potentially recruiting, getting additional people on board, but even pivoting who you're targeting to say, hey, let's target more of the card not present merchants that are where there's a lot of new revenue coming in and they're struggling to understand the right payment solution. Maybe they got categorized as high risk and they shouldn't be. They got on the match list and they shouldn't be. So yeah, I agree. I think that's a huge opportunity for people to maybe make a pivot and transition their career a bit and go after a fresh market.
There is.
Go ahead, Chris. They've gone e-commerce too. I mean, everybody around here, it's like, I mean, when everything's delivery or pickup, all of a sudden things change quite a bit, So I think that contributed to the match part. The other thing I was to say on a big picture level, one of the things that displaces more payment is the card brands, right? I mean, like the adoption of additional payment kind of methods that are out there, the card brands are actually a deterrent to it because it's competition to them and they don't want any competition.
Right.
This may actually create an environment where everything goes digital, and now we've got a place where there truly is an exchange for some of these digital currencies that are out there, and there's actual so much adoption that the card brands are going to have to give some leverage to figure out how that's going to assimilate into like normal payment.
Yeah, I like it. So before I definitely want to get to Q&A because I know we got so many questions in here to answer. But before we do that, both of you, like I would love, we need to do another 2-hour event to go through all this stuff. Can you guys tell our listeners where should they go if they're looking for some legal advice, if they're looking for an attorney in the payment space? Where would you guys send them to look?
You can go to our website. It's globallegallawfirm.com, or you can email Chris or I is jhuber, Huber, at attorneygl.com, and Chris is cdryden at attorneygl.com, and just email us and we're happy to, get to know you and answer any questions. And
awesome. Love it. So here's what I'm going to do, guys. Are you guys good for another 5 or 10 minutes, or do you got to jump off? You got a few minutes? Okay, cool.
We're all right.
All right, good. I'm going to go ahead and unmute Matt. I'm going to unmute your line here. And Matt, if you want to turn your webcam back on, feel free. And then what I'm going to do here is, give me 1 second to pull this back up here. Okay, so let's go back here. Okay, so let me pull the questions up here, and we'll just answer questions for a little bit. And then we'll jump off. And again, if I don't get to your question today, then I will go through all the questions, my team will, and we will get back to you. So, all right, questions. Here we go. So let's see how far down we got here. Marjorie still says that the Paycheck Protection Program info is super confusing. So it Matt, give us the 30, but for a 1099 contractor, I think we can do this, right? So Matt, give us 30 seconds on the Paycheck Protection Program. What is it, and what do you need to do to take advantage of it? Give us the really short spiel.
Sure. If you made money, not from working for somebody else as a W-2 employee. So if you're not an employee and you made money, go with a copy of your driver's license and the log into your bank accounts, assuming you were in business February 15th of last year, before the pandemic, which is 2020, and just fill in your information and try. That is the simplest thing. Realistically, It's all based on databases and automation on the back end anyway, from the SBA side. So worst case you can find out is you're in the exact spot you're in right now.
Love it. Okay. Chris, going to you. If a company received round one Paycheck Protection Program and used 100% on payroll, kept all their employees, but they did not experience a revenue reduction of 25% in any quarter or for the year, do they have any SBA options to, get more money from the Paycheck Protection Program?
Actually, there are a couple. If you gave money back, so say you got a certain amount of money on the front end and then you weren't going to use the whole thing and you ended up giving it back, or you didn't take the full allotment that you could have gotten, you can actually get that money this time around as an addition. So there is the ability to do so. And I don't know if it's been tested against the 25% reduction, but I think you could almost make the case, I'm a lawyer, I'm going to argue, you could almost make the case that since I gave that money back, I'm still in round one.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting.
So,
yes.
So I do believe that there is some flexibility there, but it might take some finessing.
Okay. I'll rapid fire a few more here. Somebody's asking, what should I use for my EIN number? Matt, I think this comes back to you're probably applying through your bank and they're not streamlining the process.
Yeah, so you're doing it wrong. So what we have done is we don't want to ask you for your information more than once. So when you fill out your email on the quiz, it pulls over automatically. If you say that you're a sole prop, we don't ask you for an EIN. You don't have an EIN. So it very much is we spend ungodly number of hours trying to make it simple and straightforward and concise and direct.
Yep, love it. So will forgiveness be as easy as applying? I think the answer is actually easier. I don't know.
That's how we judge ourselves is based on the forgiveness piece. And if you look at the numbers, if you go to SBA.gov, you can see that there's a very, very, very small amount that have not been forgiven that have tried to.
Right, exactly. I mean, our process was really easy with that. Several people asked for the link again. It's ccsalesppp.com. And I should mention, I guess, too, if you are an ISO, LLC, S Corp, C Corp, I mean, you can still go through this process. The survey does guide you through that, and you can start the process there.
I have a question for Matt, because I didn't look into the 1099 side of it, but does that include the K1?
So if you got a K1, that would flow into your Schedule C on your personal return.
So that would would be able to actually go and see, there's something that I learned by being on the webinar. Yeah. I didn't know if that could be included. So
awesome.
So for anybody who doesn't know, if you get a K1 from your company, which is generally how you get a distribution and how it's registered with the IRS, you could actually use those totals to go in, and maybe I'll even go use Blue Acorn today and get some extra cash.
There you go.
As long as it hits your line 7 in your Schedule C, that's the only line number that matters. It used to be 31, which is below the line after all these expenses, and they switched it to above the line, which is like unbelievable. And we're seeing the amounts go way up compared to before. I mean, almost triple in most cases.
I actually got an email from an agent that actually was talking about that and said, please let everybody know how big of a deal this is, because he was really surprised by the amount that he got from that. A lot of the questions here are regarding, hey, I started a limited liability company in late 2019, and so there wasn't much revenue. But I mean, the idea here is, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, I mean, it's all you just add it all up. So if you had 20, any 1099 income, any K1 income from an LLC, any S Corp, you just add up all of your non-W2 income for 2019 and divide it by 12, and that's your monthly average, right?
Yep, and then multiply that monthly by 2.5.
Right. Okay, got it. Let's see if there's anything else here that looks interesting. Some of these questions
since you guys are attorneys, I am not an attorney or an accountant. Anything that I'm telling you is based on the information I have been provided. And
ditto for me on that one. So I didn't do my normal I normally do the disclaimer right at the beginning and say I'm not an attorney.
You should have it on the slides.
I know, I need to. I really do. So for anybody still listening, I'm not an attorney there. Is this money available to nonprofits?
Yes, it is just opened up to nonprofits. I believe that's a recent change, correct, guys?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. The biggest difference between the EIDL and the PPP, James, you want to tackle that one for us? The EIDL being the loan versus the Paycheck Protection Program. What's the biggest difference between the two?
Well, you don't have to qualify for the EIDL, right?
Right, and you got to pay it back, I believe, right?
Yeah, and then
And
you
you
got to
got
pay it back. Yeah,
good.
forgiveness versus non-forgiveness.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So kind of a
it's
different deal there.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
30-year paper. So
Right.
yeah, the terms are
Yeah.
so good. Just go get it.
Right.
Get it and
Right.
give it to me, and
Yeah.
I'll pay it back for you.
it's
Yeah, I gotta say, I really think, for those that have already gotten all their round one money and their round two money, that is such a big opportunity. It really is. I talked to a rep just 2 weeks ago. He did this, the EIDL loan. He qualified to get like 70,000, and he actually went out and bought one of his. He had like a couple small competitors, sales reps in his area. He went and bought one of their books at like a 14x, and
That's awesome.
that was huge for him. He
yes.
just dramatically, and now he's got to pay this tiny little payment for 30 years. It's nothing. He's going to make a fortune versus that. So go get some capital. If you can put it to work, go get it.
Have you heard
Yeah.
of anybody that's had the EIDL twice, or was that a one-time offering?
One.
I think it was just one time. I hope it's twice. If it is twice, I'll go get some more right now, but I don't think it's twice.
Yeah,
I think it's one per EIN, but
it was okay. Okay.
yeah, I mean, there's been a bunch of talk also about restaurants. There's some crazy stuff that we're hearing proposed that would be phenomenal for restaurants, but I've not seen it be fully approved yet. So
Right.
I don't want to speculate because it's
Yeah.
the things you hear are all over the place.
Yes. Matt, are there any other fees for the Paycheck Protection Program, application fees, et cetera, et cetera?
Absolutely nothing. So like we are paid by the government to administer this. Anyone who is charging you a fee, like I would recommend avoiding. We do not charge a single nickel in any way, shape, or form. We have people on the site 24/7 from a chat perspective. You can talk to live. We have no chat bots. Everyone who you're talking to is a human, or at least as
Right.
far as I know, it's a human, because some of them
Right.
can get a little ornery after being
At work
but
all
yeah,
day. Yes.
yeah, everyone's a person, and it's live chat.
Awesome.
Sometimes it gets a little busy, but
Cool.
it's
We'll
absolutely.
do a couple more real quick. James, let me throw one at you here because this is kind of off topic a bit, but they heard, I think, Chris talking about the leases and stuff like that. Do you guys ever affordably help merchants that might be locked into some kind of a lease or other predatory terminal or POS equipment lease agreement that they didn't realize they were signing it, that kind of thing? Any advice or anything that you guys do in those situations?
Yeah, I mean, we used to work really heavily in the leasing space. One thing is to go and attack the lease itself, go after the company, come over the top and go, yeah, this is a predatory lease. You're charging me $6,000 for a VX20, and just kind of threaten and bully them out of it. But as far as getting tied up with buying a merchant out of things,
Not cost effective. It's not. It's
yeah,
not cost effective.
Right.
you don't
No,
want to invest money into a merchant unless you yourself are putting them in another lease.
Right.
That used to be the great model. I'll buy you out of your lease,
Yep.
more expensive one because you actually needed 3 VX20s. So,
Right.
but our best method is we just go attack them, and we've been effective at that.
I would, and I would say that two things on that. The Northern Leasing tried to start up kind of in the same vein in Illinois, and the New York AG discovered it and then squashed them again. And Ascentium just went out of business. And so there's not a lot of lease vendors now in the space any longer. And so I think you're going to see a lot less of it. But there are actually some new leasing vendors that are out there that are doing it really different and making the lease premiums look like a residual with actually monthly lease caps that are low.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Couple other really quick ones here for Matt. I'll just throw at you rapid fire. You mentioned about unemployment. We got a lot of questions about that. So I'm a 1099 contractor. I did make 1099 income in 2019 and 2020, but in 2020, I accepted some unemployment compensation to, replace some of my income. How does that impact my ability to get the PPP?
So any other income that you got at the time from the government, whether it's disability, whether it's like unemployment or things like that, does not qualify towards PPP income. But
I can
as
still
long
apply.
as you can still apply, absolutely, you just can't factor that money in, which is based on your projections and the honor system. In general, if you know, that is pretty much the only caveat. You can't be on active unemployment right now. If you're collecting unemployment right now, you can't
Right.
collect unemployment and PPP because the government looks at it as you're getting paid twice from the government.
Cool. One other question for you, Matt, real quick. Some people are saying, hey, I went to Blue Acorn and they did their app, but they're worried maybe they did something wrong. They didn't hear back, that kind of thing. If it's been longer than a couple of weeks, should they just reapply, or what should they do in those situations?
No, reach out to you, and if you can forward it to me, that would be great. Most of the biggest errors that we're seeing are either uploading a February 2021, not a February 2020 bank statement,
Right.
or essentially like not completing something correctly, or it's just an SBA error. You should be check your spam box, because in general we're communicating daily with people as well as by text messages.
Okay. So if you haven't heard or you have a question for Blue Acorn, just email me directly. I'll forward it over to Matt. It's james@ccsalespro.com, and he'll take a look for you. So
I'm happy to handle it directly, you know, to make sure that everyone gets white glove service in the community.
awesome. So last question. I've had several people ask for the link again. It should be up on your screen right now, but the link is CC Sales PPP. So ccsalesppp.com. Go there, get your application done, get your money. To all three of you, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I know our audience has gotten a lot of value intrinsically, and hopefully they're actually going to get some value into their bank accounts in the next few weeks as a result. So thank you all so much for taking time to join us today.
Thanks, James.
Thanks, James.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.